It is time for some college football confidential with our friend and national college football writer, John Talty. And John, I'm calling this one the Carolinas edition. You went on a bit of a road trip over the last few weeks and got to listen and speak with some people within the programs that are located in the Carolina region. So let's start in Columbia, South Carolina, where you spoke with Shane Beamer coming off a almost trip to the playoff last season. So what did he tell you about expectations going into this season?
Yeah, I think South Carolina is at such an interesting moment here where, as you said, they just missed making the playoffs. One of the teams that had the best arguments to make the playoff. Their return, I think, and I'm curious what, maybe Cooper has a different thought, but potentially two of the best building blocks in all of college football in Lenore Sellers at quarterback, and then you got an edge rusher and Dylan Stewart. It's a great building block, but they lose a lot of guys too. And so I think for Shane, it's trying to manage expectations to a certain point. Not that he's afraid of them, not that he doesn't know how big this year can be, but knowing that they do lose multiple guys who are going to get drafted in April, that they do have a lot of replacements to figure out. And I think this spring is a really important moment to see, okay, what do we might still need to get from the portal? Do these, all these wide receivers that we got out of the high school ranks, are they good enough to be the weapons we need for Lenore Sellers and on and on? So I think South Carolina is an exciting team to watch. They're going to be a trendy, I think, playoff pick. And there's still some things to figure out beyond just kind of those top two marquee names in Lenore's and, of course, Dylan.
They're a really fascinating team, John. I'm glad you kind of brought up Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart is kind of the guy that I think is going to have bigger shoes to fill, actually, with what they did last year. You talk about that unit and the success that they had. They're losing a lot of guys. So, for me, I think the biggest thing, South Carolina kind of surprised a lot of teams last year in the SEC. They got better and better, almost pulled off wins versus LSU and Alabama. They win one of those two games. They're probably in the playoffs, like you alluded to. I want to know, John, just your level of confidence talking to Shane Beamer in terms of how they feel internally about, can this team take the next step, make the college football playoff this year? Because I think a lot of the expectations in Columbia with a lot of their fans is, all right, we have the guy in Lenora Sellers that a lot of people are talking about as a Heisman contender. Can this team overcome a lot of those departures on the defensive side of the ball, and especially in terms of pass catchers as well, take that next step and go to a college football playoff?
Yeah, they're really bullish so far on their freshman receivers that they have. Again, it's super early, but I think that they really like the group that they got. Nyck Harbor is a guy that they're very excited about. We all know that guy is a freak and has not been devoted solely to football until this spring. We'll probably get into more of that later, but that I think is a piece that they're like really excited about. Think they can do a lot, with him. But yeah, it's an interesting moment. And I talked to Shane because I think we've talked about this on this show too, other schools where they feel like this is the all-in year, this is the all-in moment. And I don't get that sense from South Carolina. I feel like they feel like they can be competitive for multiple years. They got very close to making it last year. They feel good about this year. I think if you look at the youth of some of these guys, could have them for another year. So there's a range, there's a window here that I think is not solely this year, but certainly, again, when you have a guy like Sellers, who could be, one of the best QBs, if not the best QB South Carolina has had in a very long time, if he lives up to the expectations. It's a South Carolina kid. There's a lot of attention around him, and you do have to capitalize on that moment. And I think Shane Beamer is very aware of that, and they like where they're at right now, both in terms of what they added out of the portal and also the high school guys that they brought in.
And Sellers would certainly like if former five-star wide receiver Nyck Harbor, as you said, finally gets going this season. You spoke with some people around the program. What did they tell you as far as expectations for him to take in this upcoming year?
Yeah, they're high. I mean, I think he talked about the other day getting his eyes fixed. So that's, that always helps, maybe help catching some balls. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, I talked to some coaches about it, and I talked to Lenore's about it, that Lenore Sellers played a role in convincing Nyck Harbor to stop doing track. Basically told him, listen, man, like, it's time. Like, we've got a moment here. Like, we need you all in. Because as you guys know, you can do two sports. We've seen football players play baseball and track, but it's hard. It's hard to be great at either. I feel like sometimes you almost lower your ceiling in both, trying to deal with both, trying to stay healthy in both. And I think they felt like Harbor maybe had not met his full potential in football by having to try to do both. And I thought, it was telling that a guy like Lenore is still a young guy, could have that kind of relationship with Nyck to be like, all right, man, like let's do this. It's time. I need all of you. And it resonated with Harbor, and here he is doing all football for the first time since he's been at South Carolina.
Yeah, we kind of knew when we ranked Harbor as a 5-star coming out. I mean, this was a guy, dynamic athlete. We really hadn't seen anything like him. I mean, you think about the size, the athleticism combination, two-way player. I know you and I were kind of talking about it a little bit yesterday. I actually thought that his ceiling would be the highest on the defensive side of the football, and him playing two sports has kind of made this transition to the college game a little bit harder to navigate because he's been all in on the track and field side, obviously trying to qualify for the Olympics. John, I'd be interested to know, have they seen a difference just in terms now with the time being committed to football? I guess when you would say, talking about his development really as a route runner, a pass catcher as well, those are two areas where I think he's needed to take a step. Have they seen a little bit of, I guess, the investment off the field now with the time solely focused on the football field?
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, it's early in spring, so there's still quite a few practices to go. You'll get fall camp too, but yeah, I mean they feel really good about him. And again, I think that's why one of the things that I wondered going to South Carolina was felt like they might need a portal receiver or two. They had gotten a lot of high school guys. It still felt like maybe they needed one or two more guys. And asking around about it, it's kind of like, well, like Nyck Harbor is kind of that guy. Maybe we haven't seen all of him to this point, but we believe really strongly in what he's able to do, what we've seen so far, and just as you mentioned, Coop, just pure physical attributes. And this guy is freaky fast, freaky athletic. That they can really mold that and do even more of that. Just having him around the building more, and then also getting to work with Mike Shula, who I'm really bullish about, I think was a great QB coach, offensive coordinator at a bunch of places. I think he's going to be really good for not only Lenore Sellers, but also for guys like Nyck and other, offensive guys that they've either added or are trying to build up moving forward.
I remember when he was coming out of high school, it was all about like, we'll figure out the rest later, but just an athlete like that you want to have on your football team and you want to have on your campus. So interesting to see what he does when he's focused on all ball coming up this fall.